The rising sun crept over the mountains of Burma, casting long shadows across the jungle floor and the ragged runway of an Allied airfield. The air hung heavy with heat and dust, and the sharp smell of aviation fuel clung to every breath. It was January 1942, and the sky was no longer a place of freedom. It was a battlefield. Captain John D. Lancaster, a 29-year-old pilot with the American Volunteer Group, known to the world as the Flying Tigers, stood beside his Curtiss P-40 Warhawk. The plane was a snarling beast, its shark mouth painted, on the nose like a warning to anything daring to cross its path. But today, Lancaster was more than just a fighter pilot. He was the only shield standing between the 64 bombers and fighters of the Imperial, Japanese Air Force, and the ground troops pinned below. The Japanese raid had been anticipated, but not in such massive numbers. Intelligence had underestimated the scale. Most of the squadron was out on other missions. By the time the enemy came roaring over the hills, there were barely 3 American planes available for interception. One was already grounded. One had engine trouble. That left one man, Lancaster. He looked at the incoming swarm, like angry hornets, blotting out the sun, and knew what it meant: certain death. But retreat wasn't an option. Down below, Allied ground forces were digging trenches, hauling wounded and staring helplessly skyward. If those bombers got through, hundreds would die. Better to die fighting than live hiding, Lancaster muttered, strapping into his cockpit. The propeller roared to life, dust swirling into a storm around the aircraft. As the P-40 charged down the runway, the very earth seemed to shake under the weight of the moment. He climbed into the skies like a falcon loosed from its tether. The first wave of bombers came into view. 12. Japanese Mitsubishi G3M Nell. Bombers in tight formation, flanked by A6M0 fighters above and below. Lancaster's eyes narrowed. He pushed the throttle forward until the engine howled in defiance. He wasn't going to pick off stragglers. No, he was going straight into the center. With guns blazing, he dove into the formation from above. His first burst ripped through the right wing of a bomber. Flames burst out like dragon's breath. The bomber spiraled, trailing smoke, crashing into another in its descent. 2 down. The formation scattered. Before the enemy could regroup, Lancaster looped around, using the P-40's speed in a high-speed pass. Another Zero closed in on his tail, cannon shells shredding through his left wing. Sparks danced across the fuselage. But Lancaster rolled sharply and dove low, skimming the treetops, then pulled back into a vertical climb, throwing off the pursuer. He came up behind another bomber and unleashed hell. The gunners fired back, bullets thudding into the canopy. One cracked the glass. Blood ran down his shoulder, but Lancaster didn't flinch. He finished the attack, and the bomber exploded mid-air, engulfed in a fiery blossom against the blue sky. 4 down. The radio crackled, calls from ground units screaming, "They're still coming! God help us, they're everywhere!" Lancaster's voice came through calm and cold. "I'll hold them. Keep your heads down." His P-40 was now leaking oil, and the engine sputtered, but he kept going. Again and again he dove into impossible odds. He danced with death, his aircraft torn and bleeding like its pilot. Still he climbed. Still he fought. One of the Japanese aces, a Zero painted with a crimson sunburst, got behind him. Bullets riddled the tail. Lancaster pulled hard left, flipping into a tight spiral, and as the enemy overshot, he unleashed a stream of fire straight through the Zero's cockpit. 5, 6, 7 kills, then 8. Even the Japanese pilots began to panic. "There is more than one," they thought. "There must be a squadron." But it was just him. One man, one machine, one mission. On the ground, soldiers watched in awe. Children in the village stood behind trees, staring at the streaks of smoke and flame in the sky. Mothers whispered prayers. The name Sky Devil began to spread like myth. By the end of the encounter, over a dozen enemy planes had been shot down, and the bombing run was scattered. The rest of the formation turned back, limping toward the horizon, leaving a smoldering sky behind. Lancaster's P-40 barely made it back. Its landing gear failed, and he crash-landed at the edge of the airstrip, flames licking the sides of the wreck. Medics pulled him out, bloodied, broken, but alive. He had saved thousands, alone. For his action, Captain Lancaster was recommended for the Distinguished Flying Cross. Though the war would move on, and his name would fade from most books. But among those who were there, in the bunkers, in the trenches, and in the skies, his courage became legend. Because that day, one man truly fought the sky. Subscribe for more Wings.